morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure to be with you today, to be with so many people who are deeply involved in industries that are truly crucial to the future not only of the American economy, but the entire world economy. I would like to begin today by giving you a figure that I think will catch your attention. The American trade deficit last year was 4.5% of gross domestic product. Some people here in this room will remember that there was a famous trade crisis at the beginning of the 1970s, a trade crisis which forced President Nixon to abandon the dollar's connection with gold, to go off the gold standard. It was an extremely humiliating move for Nixon, but he felt he had no choice because the trade situation was so bad. The amazing fact is that in 1971, the deficit was just 0.1% of GDP. And in 1972, it was 0.5% of GDP. And it was the prospect of that 0.5% considered so shocking at the time that the United States was forced to go off the gold standard. Now let's look at this in the larger context of other nations. There have been occasions when some of the other G7 countries have incurred deficits larger than 4.5%. Let's name those nations: Japan, Germany, Italy, France, Britain, Canada. I think that from our perspective today, none of these occasions gives us any grounds for comfort, because with one exception, all of these deficits were incurred at a time of extreme wartime devastation. Now let's look at that exception, the peacetime occasion when one country exceeded that figure of 4.5%. That was Italy in 1924. Let me remind you that Italy in 1924 was a true economic basket case, so much so that its economic problems then paved the way for the rise of fascism. I should not be unduly alarmist today, because I don't think America's problems are nearly as bad as Italy's problems in the mid-1920s. Of course they're not. But why are these figures relevant today? They're relevant for this reason, because they tell us something profound about the state of American manufacturing. Despite the best efforts of the US Energy Department, despite the best efforts of policymakers generally, American manufacturing is still in general decline. In previous years, America could both have a boom and also balance its trade, indeed even create a surplus. A classic example was 1957, a great year for the economy, a great year for trade. What's really going on here is that for a variety of reasons, America is moving out of manufacturing and into post-industrial services. But post-industrial services have many drawbacks also, and one of them is that they do not export. They do very little exporting. I calculate that in relation to value added, manufacturing industries in the United States generate about 11 times more exports than service industries generally. There are many reasons why trade still matters, why national boundaries still matter. Let me give you one in particular: exchange rates. If a country continues to run deficits indefinitely, its currency becomes vulnerable. It often takes a long time for the effects to be felt, but the effects, when they come, are often devastating. In the 15 years that I've lived in Japan, I have seen the dollar drop by 50% on two occasions, once between 85 and 87, and secondly in the early 1990s. I believe that a further devaluation of the dollar cannot be far away. May not be today, may not be tomorrow, may not be even next year, but it's coming, and it will be very large when it does come. I've been looking at IMF figures for America's net foreign liabilities, and the numbers, I believe, will surprise you. In the first 9 years of the 1990s, America's net foreign liabilities rose from a relatively modest $49 billion to $1.53 trillion. That's a 30-fold increase. Manufacturing has many benefits for a society. that are being overlooked in much of the discussion in the press and in the policy-making community. For one thing, manufacturing creates a wide range of jobs. It creates jobs for just about everybody. That contrasts sharply with the performance in the new economy, where the tendency is to create jobs mainly for an intellectual elite, for perhaps the top 5% or even the top 1% of the population. A good example here, on the one hand, on the manufacturing side, is steel. Steel creates jobs that are mainly for blue-collar workers. 60–70% of the jobs are blue-collar jobs. Take on the other side Microsoft. Microsoft, according to Fortune magazine, creates jobs mainly for geniuses and near geniuses. Essentially, the point is that manufacturing closely matches the needs of society in its job creation pattern. It gives everyone a chance to make a contribution. There's another reason why the decline of manufacturing is so worrying, and that is that manufacturing is the key to a high-wage economy. There are now 6 nations in the world that boast higher wages than the United States at current market exchange rates, and also boast a higher proportion of their workforce in manufacturing. And this is not accidental. Let me give you the nations: Japan, Switzerland, Germany, Denmark, Sweden, Austria. I said earlier that the relative decline of manufacturing in recent decades in the United States has not been the fault of manufacturers. So who is to blame? It's time for the blame game. I think that there are many culprits, but 2 in particular should be singled out. I think that policymakers cannot entirely escape blame for the problems in many manufacturing industries. Our policymakers in the United States have been less than effective in many key aspects of the competitive environment. In particular, they have not done enough to level the playing field in trade, in world trade. For decades, the United States has been on the receiving end of dumping from many parts of the world. It has even been on the receiving end of deliberately predatory tactics by certain foreign suppliers. The result is that profit margins are depressed in the American industries concerned. The American companies start out very strong, but as they go forward with depressed profit margins, they have less to reinvest in their business, less to plow back than their competitors abroad. Their competitors abroad are often working from behind tariff barriers or non-tariff barriers in their home market. They can price their products in the home market to recover their full overheads and sell in the American market at marginal cost. The result is that American companies gradually become weakened. Just one point: it's time our media took a new look at manufacturing. It's time our media understood that manufacturing is a great business, or at least it should be a great business for shareholders, for workers, for consumers, for the world in general. And fundamental manufacturing industries, if I may say so, are fundamentally important. Thank you.